What's up guys, welcome back to another GJ video review, and today we're taking a look at the LUCA L70 from TRYX. Now you might be wondering, who is this company? Now they're relatively new. We covered them at Phanteks earlier this year, and they really made themselves popular when they had that Panorama all-in-one cooler that has the screen that wraps around. You can see it from the main side, you can see it from the front side, and I will talk a little bit about that all-in-one cooler in this video as well. Now the company has quite a few members or designers from a lot of other well-known companies. So as I said, they are quite new. They have people from ROG, they have people from Cooler Master. So they definitely have the backing behind them. And as I saw at Phanteks, some of their designs, some of their cases, especially this one, it's not just using high quality parts like aluminum and all that. It's also some of the design elements and the modularity, which I think is a really good path to what they're aiming towards. But in this video, I'm going to cover everything you need to know, from all-in-one cooler support, storage support, the different materials they've used, the modularity parts like the PSU, the motherboard tray, and of course, like always, all of the custom water cooling support. So let's jump in and get started. Now this is different. Yes, we've seen this chassis layout before, but the way TRYX have gone about this case from start to finish is like something I've never seen before. And instead of creating something completely new in hopes to catch attention, TRYX haven't reinvented the PC case, but rather finally crafted their version of the perfect PC case. For example, starting with the packaging, and for some reason when packaging isn't up to par, I start to lose interest in the product. Now I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but this is just how I feel. TRYX have done an exceptional job here, and they are the very few to implement that TV style two-part cardboard box where you remove the 4 plastic clips and lift the top portion off. This then reveals the LUCA L70, which is covered by a cloth bag. The packaging material is also the preferred foam as well. But don't throw away the box just yet, unless you don't have cats. Why, you might be asking? That's because TRYX have made this a fun experience with a cat-shaped cutout on the side to turn the cardboard box into a cat house. And we all know cats love cardboard boxes, so kudos for out-of-the-box thinking. Case accessories are found in the very top portion of the packaging foam, where you'll find all the screws, screw storage box, manual, and PSU side cover, which I'll talk about later. The LUCA L70 definitely has some futuristic vibes, but nothing over the top, and the attention to details from what I can see is quite impressive. From just about any angle, the L70 has something going on, and I can only imagine how long TRYX designers spent coming up with these angular pieces and patterns on the case. One nice touch is that sort of tag that comes attached to the handle. Does it have a purpose? No, but it's that extra thought that makes it that little bit more satisfying of your purchase. And let's talk about that handle. And yes, it is a handle which is meant to be grabbed by one hand while your other hand grabs the back of the case. The part you grab at the back is reinforced under the removable plastic top panel, so there's no fear of grabbing the plastic top by mistake. The handle at the front is made from aluminum and is very strong. There was no way I could make it flex. Speaking of flex, this handle also holds a bit of a plaque that comes with a stock design template from TRYX. I was lucky enough to cover their Phanteks booth earlier this year, and the guys at TRYX gave me my very own personalized plaque that I can put on this handle instead. I reached out to TRYX to see how others can get their own plaque, but at this stage, the stock one is the only one on offer, and it will come down to the consumer to engrave it themselves. The question for you guys, is this something you would be interested in? If TRYX had an option to buy set designs or customize their own via their website, let me know in the comments. The L70 comes in at 571 high, 260 wide, and 545 deep, with 2 models, either white or black, and you might be surprised that this chassis is single chamber design, not a dual chamber. For the black model, everything comes black, and I feel the aluminum parts don't stand out like on the white model. We'll cover these parts soon. The 4mm thick tempered glass is clear on the white model, and about a medium to dark tint on the black model. Another highlight for the L70 is its almost complete toolless design, and I'll cover these areas more as I go through the review. The main side panel is held in by clips at the top, and a notch can also be found at the top to help push this panel out. As this panel slots in at the bottom, once released from the top, it doesn't completely swing down, rather it holds itself in place. For the front tempered glass panel, I straight away assumed removing it would be done the same way, but it's not, and I don't think I've seen this design before on this style of case. I've worked on many cases where the front glass either pushes on via clips or is dropped down and screwed in, but I've never seen it swing open. Once again, a little notch can be found, but this time on the left corner, and this just makes it that little bit easier to get some grip on the glass. This front panel is also removable, while toolless as well. The hinge design consists of clips which hold the panel in place. To remove, simply swing the panel open and pull to remove from the clips. TRYX have also added a funky design element to the top of the glass panels. Rather than leaving it white, they've gone with a design that matches the vents on the case. You may have noticed by now that the L70 uses a pillarless corner design, and this has really come into fashion in the past year or so. I must admit, with both glass panels removed, there is a bit of sag and movement in the chassis frame, but this would only be like this when building in the L70. Once built, I can assume you would have at least one of the tempered glass panels on, and once either one or both panels are back on, there is no flex or movement at all. For chassis materials, I feel TRYX have really tried to outdo their competitors in this area, while also keeping the price of the case down. The main internal frame is made from steel, which is expected for a case in this price bracket. The only plastic on this case is the magnetic top cover, which has a built-in dust filter, and the PSU chamber and cap. And let's just take a minute to appreciate the design up here. Rather than just being flat, it contours from the main side and back, sloping towards the handle for a more dramatic effect. The last material is the use of aluminum, not just one type, but two types of aluminum. 5000 series aluminum is used on the rear side panel, and let's just stop here again to appreciate the design here. This panel is 2mm thick, 100% toolless with no thumb screws at all, and I found this panel is very rigid with a minimal flex. 6000 series aluminum is used for the feet as well as the right side and top pieces. The base design on the L70 is to give that floating illusion and also helps with airflow, lifting the case 40mm off the ground. Moving over to front I/O, and this area is also made from 6000 series aluminum. For ports, you'll find 4 USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A ports, 1 USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C port, and an audio combo port. I appreciate the extra detail here that all these ports are white and not blue for the USB. The power button and power LED seamlessly fits into this front area, which can be found just to the left of the audio combo port. One large full-length dust filter can be found at the bottom of the case, which pulls out from the front. Moving inside the L70, there's a removable motherboard tray, which is nice to see and a feature we don't often see anymore. This is handy as we can install hardware outside the chassis on the motherboard tray, then pop the whole assembly back into the case. Further to this, the chassis has 2 motherboard mounting positions, and this also directly relates to the PSU location. In this current layout, the PSU is at the top, so the motherboard is in its lower position. If we like, we can remove the PSU, bump the motherboard tray up, then relocate the PSU to the bottom of the chassis. Motherboard support is up to eATX, and I had no issues with my test ROG Z790 Extreme with the 24-pin cable installed in either the lower or upper motherboard tray positions. For EPS and with the motherboard in its lower position, cable routing was tight but still manageable. With the motherboard tray in its upper position, EPS cable routing clearance was better. For bottom motherboard cable clearance, I found with the motherboard in its lower position, cable routing was fine with a large cutout under for cables, but in the upper position and with the PSU at the bottom, cable routing was going to be tight, but there was a small gap for cables to run through. You'll also find back connect motherboard support, and I had no issues with my test TUF Z790 BTF, MSI Z790 Project Zero, and finally, I got my hands on an AORUS Stealth board, and I had no issues with that either. And one thing to note though, is that back connect boards are only supported with the motherboard tray in its lower position. With the motherboard tray in the upper position, you can see the chassis frame is in the way. For GPU support, there's 495mm to the front panel or 325mm to the start of the side radiator location. For air-cooled GPUs that run past the side radiator location, there's 58mm of clearance here if you wish to run fans or, say, a radiator. For GPU width for water block cards, there's roughly 165mm of clearance here, which is just enough for my TRYX 4090 with an EK block. There is also an included anti-sag bracket for your GPU, which swivels, is height adjustable, and can be removed altogether. I found this worked well for air-cooled GPUs and also for shorter water block cards. For CPU air cooler height, there's roughly 165mm of clearance. Moving on to the PSU location, and there are 2 different spots for your PSU depending on your build. By default, the power supply bay comes pre-installed at the top, but as you saw earlier, the motherboard tray can be installed higher, moving the PSU to the bottom of the chassis. Power supplies are installed via using the supplied bracket and slid in from the back. For max PSU length, I'd stick to no more than 170mm if you wish to keep the plastic end cap on the PSU cover. Luckily, if you require more room, this part can be removed for extra cable clearance. And lastly, TRYX have also included a magnetic cover plate if you don't wish to see a PSU through the cutouts. Moving around the back for storage support, the L70 has a few options here. For 2.5-inch SSDs, there's a swing out door where 3 SSDs can slide in and are screwed in. This door is held into place via strong magnets. Depending on your type of build, this door can be utilized 3 ways: swung all the way open where it covers the side radiator location. This could be an option where side airflow isn't required to help maintain case pressure. The second option is where the door is completely closed, acting as a cable cover. Either of these options will still hold 3 2.5-inch SSDs and the third option is the door can be removed altogether if needed. The next storage area is directly behind the motherboard on another swing out door. This can hold a whopping 6 2.5-inch SSDs or 2 3.5-inch hard drives, but there's an issue here, and this isn't the first time I've seen this. For 3.5-inch hard drives, the two spots will only support drives with center screw holes. Seems to be newer drives skip the center screw hole. Out of all my test drives, only an older 6TB had the correct mounting and was able to be installed correctly. Technically, drives without the center hole will still install with only 2 screws, but it's not ideal. I do like how once hard drives are installed, there is a cutout on the door for each drive for cables to pass through. This door can also be removed as well. Rear cable management is kept simple with a few Velcro ties and plenty of tie down points. Like always, I'll cover this more in detail at the end of the video once I've completed my build. For all-in-one cooler support, there is going to be 2 main locations. The side location will be the primary spot if you wish to keep your PSU top mounted. The side supports up to 420 AIOs, and this area is fixed where the radiator is screwed in from the back. I had no issues installing my test ASUS ProArt 420 all-in-one cooler. As this cooler with fans comes in at 56mm thick, installing a large air-cooled GPU could still run past the AIO just. There's also 32mm of clearance in the back on the side radiator bracket if you wish to install fans here. 120mm fans can only fit if you wish to keep that 3 SSD side door installed. For 140mm fans, this door will need to be removed. If you wish to mount your AIO at the top, this area also supports up to 420mm all-in-one coolers, but you will need to move the PSU location down to the bottom. And as I said earlier, with your PSU in the bottom location, you will lose back connect motherboard support, so keep that in mind. My same Test ProArt 420 all-in-one cooler also installed on the top with no issues at all. For 360 all-in-one cooler support, there were no issues either, and my Test TRYX Panorama 360 all-in-one cooler installed fine in both the top and side locations. Moving on to custom radiator support, and I'd like to thank EK Waterblocks for supporting all the radiators for this review. The LUCA L70 has 3 main radiator locations, top, bottom and side, but due to PSU fitment, not all locations can be used at once. The PSU either has to occupy the top or bottom location. Starting with 420 radiator support, and at the top, I had 80mm of clearance here for radiator and fans. Here I was able to fit an EKP 420M with fans. The side location also supports 420 rads, but running 420s at both top and side are going to be tight. Radiator thickness for the side location is roughly 61mm to the top radiator. I also found my test EKP 420M was too long for this spot and was failing on part of the chassis. If you do intend to use a 420 on the side, it will need to be less than 459mm in length to clear. The bottom location only supports 3 120 or 140mm fans and not radiators, so let's move on to 360 radiator support. And starting back at the top, and now for max radiator fitment, I was able to install an EKX 360M with fans. EPS cable routing was tight, but I was able to slide the radiator forward to clear this area. For the side location, I was able to fit another X360M, but with the X360M at the top, the ports on the side radiator had to be flipped at the bottom. Personally, I feel a slightly thinner EKP 360M was better suited at the top, and this gave better motherboard clearance and allowed for the side radiator ports to go up the top. Moving to the bottom location, you first need to put the PSU back at the top. The bottom radiator spot sports a removable bracket which radiators are installed on. Radiators can run up past your motherboard, so there's plenty of room here. I was able to install an EKX 360M with fans, no troubles at all. And as for the side with this config, I was able to install another EKX 360M with fans, and I feel fitment this way is a bit better than with the radiator at the top. Alrighty guys, now that is most of the review done. Like always, let's check out the final build. So that is the final build there. I went with a different cooling color than I think I've ever used before. I'll touch base on the build soon, but like always, a few extra things to cover before I wrap this video up. Now, two 120mm fans can go at the front of the PSU, and that is in either configuration, either with the PSU at the top, two fans can go there like I've done, or if you put your PSU down the bottom, two fans can go on the front as well. Now that's 120s only. I want to also cover how simple it was to relocate the motherboard. I didn't spend too much time on it. I really just skipped between when it was like this and when it was up high and then the PSU was down the bottom. So basically all you have to do, I did say most of the cases toolless. Really the only things that you do need a screwdriver for, of course, except for installing your hardware, are removing the modular items. So the PSU, I would say the caddy or the cage has one locking screw here. It's got a thumb screw at the back that holds the cage in. So one there, the motherboard tray has two here, there's one there and there's one here. And then it's got the two thumb screws, one there and one up there. So that slides out. And then this little blanking plate down the bottom has one screw. So they're the only screws you will need to use a screwdriver for to remove all of those modular items. And that's it, they simply just slide out on rails. You can see the little notches there where it slides in, and then there's also notches on the back on the motherboard tray. So very simple, you can do that in just a matter of seconds. Rear cable management was done really well. I thought nothing over the top. It was just simple, easy to use. Although I did cheat a little bit. I used a back connect motherboard, that AORUS Stealth Ice, which I'll talk about a little bit later. That is a really nice board. But yeah, it's one of those things where you have the flexibility to, if you want your cable routing to be at the top focused area, which your PSU is up here, or if you put your PSU down the bottom, it's going to be focused down the bottom, of course. And then there's nothing crazy like extra doors that aren't needed, other things in the way. It's just very simple, and the tie down points were just enough for what I needed, although I did have some custom cables that made it a bit easier rather than having a bunch. But in saying that, you just got to make sure that the runs are going to be catered for the PSU placement, especially if you're going with custom cables, because obviously up here, the length for your GPU run is going to be much longer than if your PSU was down here. It just has to loop up and go in. So be mindful of that, but stock cables will have no issues at all. One little thing I would have liked to have seen around the back was there wasn't much room to hide cables directly behind the back bottom here. I made a little cover plate that just stuck in there, and that just hid everything nicely because you had the nice door that closed over this area at the back. You had the larger door that pretty much went behind the direct CPU block behind there that had all of the storage support. So that covered some cables as well, but you just had this little bit at the bottom where I could see some cables. It's not going to affect anything. So I just made a little cover plate to clean that up. Now, some other things I do want to really highlight that whenever you go with a top, if you go with the RAD at the top and a PSU at the bottom, so if you go with the other alternation to this one, so if you put your PSU at the bottom, whenever that happens, you will lose the back connect support. But in saying that, I think worldwide there's 6 back connect boards at the moment. There's 2 BTF, there's 2 MSI. I think MSI have an M8X and ATX, and I think AORUS has an EATX, and then this board as well. So there's only 6. So I think out of the, God, there's probably on the market now, probably 100 to 200 different boards. I would say at least, I think 6, it's not really going to be too much of a concern for many people, but just remember in the PSU bottom config, you lose back connect support. Interesting thing I picked up with the case was there was the standoff that was the, on the left side of the motherboard, you have that middle standoff on this side, you have the bottom standoff on the left side, and they had the standoff between those two installed in the case. Now, not sure if that's going to be a huge problem. I detected it when I had one of my test boards in and it had the actual back plate on the board and it wasn't quite sitting flat. So I had a look and I noticed they have that standoff in. You can just remove it, but if you don't have a back plate on your motherboard and you put that on, you could have a cap, a resistor, anything like that, and it touches that standoff, it could cause damage to your motherboard. So I reached out to TRYX about that just to let them know that just, hey, they've got the spot for it, just don't install that standoff, because I cannot remember a board last time that needed that. I think ASRock are the only company that has a motherboard that gives you that screw hole through the motherboard for that standoff. Every other brand I've never seen use that for a very long time. Now there's another interesting thing, I can probably just take it out now. This is a PCIe latch/lock. I reached out to them what this does. I got some B-roll of this. Once you push this closed, it's meant to lock your devices in. It doesn't really do anything. Like it's handy for temporary use. Once you put a card in, you can quickly close it. But once you jiggle the card a bit without any screwing in the screws to hold the card in, as soon as you jiggle it a bit, this door just flips open a little bit and it doesn't really hold your card in. And there's no little prongs that come out of here that go through the card's screw points, so it doesn't actually stop it from going up and down or anything like that. So it's quite loose. I reached out to them about that to see if that is meant to be like that or it was missing something. But yeah, just if you're wondering what this sort of thing does, it doesn't really do too much, except for at the moment it's just hiding all of the screws, and it makes it look a little bit nicer. Now, interestingly enough, there were no screws for hard drives that came in the accessory box. So I did mention earlier that the center hole drives are needed, but all the drives I had didn't have that center hole. I fed that back to TRYX. They will look into that. You can still screw in the 2 holes. That's probably going to be enough. You just can't get the whole 4. Not a huge big deal. Not a lot of people use hard drives, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. But in saying that, they don't give you any of the UNC 632, which are screws that are required for standard hard drives, which I thought was a little bit strange. Now, another issue, this happens on all cases that have the white clear tempered glass that has that bit of the green edge. I bring that up all the time when I have that, so just be mindful of that. On the black chassis with that darker tint, you don't get that green edge on each side, so just be mindful of that. Now, one interesting thing I threw in right at the end, I wasn't going to, well, I actually didn't notice it until I started to move this case around on this table. Now, these Secret Lab desks have they call it the mag pad or something, this thing here. It's like a sort of rubberized desk mat. Now, I mentioned earlier that the feet go all the way down to the ground. I'll see if I can bend this up. They are that machined aluminum and they are very, very sharp. Like this here is very sharp. Like no one's going to really be touching this, but after I would say 4 full days of filming, moving it around on this table, this desk pad is pretty much destroyed. There's like divots here, divots here, divots here, divots here. Now I'm really careful because I do go through these quite a bit because they are easy. As soon as you like drop a screwdriver on it or anything, you do damage them. But just moving this around, if you don't put it perfectly flat down, if you go one little angle, if you have a nice wooden desk, I could imagine it would do the same thing. It would probably leave a bit of a dent. So be very careful on how you place this on your table because it will leave some marks. Now I want to talk about the all-in-one cooler, which I showcased earlier, the TRYX Panorama. That's their latest one. They launched that last week. I just wanted to give a bit of shout out about that because that is a new product they launched pretty much simultaneously with this case. The case came out, is being launched a little bit later, but they launched that all-in-one cooler last week. Now it has a 6.5-inch display. It's pretty funky. It's got the full panorama. You got the side view and then you have the front view as well. And you can actually run it just one full screen around, or you can run 2 separate ones and you can put different information on each one. Now there's not too much you can do in customization. Things like the font, the size of the font is all standard. You can change the font to black, you can change the font to white. Quite a few pre-selected items like GPU temp, CPU temp, and that's it. There's nothing funky you can go into the specs and so on, but this company is quite new. This software, they're still developing. I was pretty happy with how the Canali software works. It was quite advanced, didn't have any issues with it. As soon as I connected it into the system, it detected the fans needed updating because they had their own hub, and the all-in-one cooler needed a firmware update as well. Once I did that, no issues, everything went through fine, and then it just worked. Some other things, it's running the Acertec 8th gen cooling solution. For those wondering, it's not some third-party random mod from somewhere. They're using a decent cooling solution for that. The tubing is 40% larger. I honestly did not notice that. That's nearly 50%, so that's half bigger than what they're saying other all-in-one coolers are. I can only assume the internal diameter would be larger for, I would say, more flow or something, but from what I could see, it didn't look any bigger than all the other all-in-one coolers that I've used. The radiator is 30 millimeters thick, pretty standard, nothing oversized, nothing super skinny. I think the standard is 27, so it is slightly thicker, being 30. And then it comes in the both black and the white in 240 and 360 versions, and that is at Newegg now, so you can jump in and check out that. Now, you might be wanting vertical GPU support. This case at the moment does not have that, but if you go to the product site for this, the LUCA L70, right down the bottom, You can see there is a vertical bracket coming soon. Unfortunately, I couldn't get my hands on that, so I couldn't test that, but maybe when that is ready, I think they say Q4, so that'll be the end of this year. I can test that, but I'm just assuming, going by the photos of it, you just rip all the stock covers out. It'll just go in like every other one out there, and we'll see how that goes. If there's things like sag, if it fails on anything, how much depth we have for radiators and so on. Another thing I want to mention is maybe there's an air version coming out of this case, the LUCA L70 Air, maybe because at Computex, they did have that case on display, pretty much exactly the same, but instead of the glass, I think it had 2 whopping mesh covers for 200mm fans, and then also on the box that this comes in, down the bottom where you select your model, there's probably a standard box, and they have like a sticker where they mark in the square whether it's the air one or the glass one. That option was on the box, so I can only assume they've got that ready, that there will be an air version. But overall, really impressed with this case, especially with the finish, the quality, the nice touches they've done, the changes you can do with the power supply, the modularity is nice. Water cooling, I wouldn't say it's up there with some of the big boys like Phanteks and Lian for water cooling support, but maybe that's something I can work with them on. Maybe they can release another version that, hey, one thing I would have really liked to seen is maybe a third spot for the PSU. Now this case isn't that wide. It's nothing like Evo XL. It's not as wide as that. So maybe if they had a third spot where the PSU could go in the back, that would give you 3 options for the PSU. That'd be pretty cool. So you could have the PSU here, PSU here, PSU around the back, even 2 spots around the back. So that could be 4. And then that would open up a lot more options for radiator support, because at the moment you're really stuck with either a 360 or the 420 and the 420 just, or maybe 420 360 would be best. But whatever config you go with, you can't do top and bottom radiators because you are limited with the PSU. Has to be in one of those. And then the 2 120s I mentioned here can go here or here. That's only fans only, not a radiator. So maybe I can work with them. We can come out with something that could be a really awesome water-cool focused chassis in this main design, because it would have the aesthetic, the nice touches, and then water cooling focus. But I think one step at a time for these guys. This is their first case. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think they've done a good job on what we have here. And I just want to talk a little bit about this build. Now, I think the main highlight of this build is probably this motherboard. I don't even think it's available in the US. It's the B650 Stealth Ice from AORUS. Now I saw it overseas and I quickly snatched it up. I think there was 2 in stock and it just looks like nothing I've seen before. As you noticed in the, actually I haven't released a time-lapse video, but you'll notice in the time-lapse video, when you go to screw the motherboard into your case, none of the screw holes are visible. You got to take all of these magnetic covers off. There's one here, there's one up here, like that. So there's one there, there's one here, and then there's also the M.2 down the bottom that covers all the screw holes. And then they just cover that up nicely. And then to put them back on, it's going to be hard from this angle. You just clip them on like so, and that just cleans it up nicely. And then the rest of the board is of course all white. It is back and neck support. I think that's their second board they've done. And the interesting thing, there's just one PCIe 16-byte slot. You can't really tell in this case because the radiator covers it a bit, but yeah, there's just one slot and it just has a really clean aesthetic. Apart from that, the rest of the build is AMD 7800X3D, a 4080. All the water cooling is EK. That's their new Kinetic 3 FLT that they may be launching soon. With everything going on with EK, I don't want to bring them into this video, but I did want to use the EK water cooling gear because the satin titanium matches perfectly with this aluminum on the case of their fittings. The pump cover, I did have to paint a few things. I painted the flow meter silver, the side of the FLT, I had to paint the silver to match. And then of course the rad ends as well with that silver. It just matches perfectly. Now there was no other brand that would have been out there that would have been able to match the aesthetics in the white case. In the black case, completely different design element with the water cooling because it's all black. Even the aluminum is just black as well. So pretty much any other brand would have worked in the black chassis. Now that's pretty much it on this video. I want to cover the price. Price is $239.99, so $240 US. So it's sort of above that 150 to 170 aggressive market. Like you've got the Evo RGB That's around 150, I believe. There's a lot in that market, but this is a little bit higher. But then you have the really nice aesthetics and the quality parts, like all the aluminum, which I probably mentioned like 50 times. The modularity as well, which something you don't get on Phanteks. So if you're thinking between Lian Li Phanteks and this one, this has similar modularity to Lian Li. I wouldn't say it has as much, you can't rotate the case, but it still has the removable tray. But then it has a few extra features, I would say, to Phanteks. And then I think it has the quality material better than both of those. And then the price, $240, it's probably close to like the NV9 and then the Evo XL. So it's your decision what you want to go with. But overall, I think TRYX has done a really good job on this case. Just a few little things I mentioned, but hey, they're a new company. They can only get better from here. And then both colors are the same price. In this case, should be available at the end of September. But anyway, I want to thank TRYX for sending this out for me to review and do a build. I've got a time-lapse build dropping on this whole build, so stay tuned for that. That'll probably be a week or so once this video out. But anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.